Welcome back to TYT World Headquarters. I am Dylan Ratigan, host of the Dylan Ratigan Show each day on MSNBC, friend of Cenk Uygur, who will hopefully return in one happy, healthy peace from whatever it is that's keeping his time in Amsterdam, Holland these days. And I think both of us know what can keep a man's time when in Amsterdam, but we'll save that for Cenk when he gets back on Tuesday. I do want to reiterate the protest before we get into the rest of the news here today. Ask Goldman Sachs to give it back is the protest that Cenk is leading, and what a great one it is. Goldman Sachs obviously taking money hand over fist from the government. At the same time, they're mouthing how they don't need the money while they keep the money and use it to their benefit and not necessarily to anybody else's. Lots of other items in the news today. Enough with the oil and the banks and what we get it. We're on it. We're working it. But what are we going to do? We're still here. I'm in California. I got to enjoy myself. I'm going to rent a convertible or something. But before I do that, I want to sort of get a little more gritty with the TYT environment. I've been trying to figure out what the difference between Cenk's show and my own show is. And one big difference is Cenk's producer is willing to go on camera with him and talk about what's going on, whereas my producers insist on hiding so that I take all the bullets. And so I'm going to bring JR in here. You surely know JR probably better than I, as I only met him this afternoon, although he seems to be quite the talented individual, and I'm thinking about trying to bait him back to New York to work with us. Just don't tell Cenk. I'm not sure how much you cost, JR. Will you come back to New York with me if
The first issue is you just told Cenk, because when he leaves, he's always kind of around. He watches, he emails, he doesn't stop.
Really?
If he's
like the eye in the sky.
I think the only time was when he was on his honeymoon. I'm not even sure he was actually on that.
He might have had one eye on the webcam there. Is it like does he have cameras and does he have extra cameras in here so he can he see me right now playing house in his house?
Every once in a while, you never really know. Sometimes things happen, and
but your point is I should just watch my ass
all the time. You're in the city too. I mean, there's connections around there.
That's how the city works. He can just send a single text message and it's lights out for Ratigan. Is that what you're saying?
Well, just don't be in the convertible.
All right, I won't be in the convertible. Thank you for the heads up. But you didn't answer my question. Will you come back to New York and work on the Dylan Ratigan Show?
Oh, see, I need to take a tour. I need to check things out.
We have Perrier water. Old media, we've got limo service.
I mean, all this works.
Come on, baby.
I mean, all this works. I mean,
no,
we need some cash flow.
It's a little scratch. You want some back scratching. I got it. All right, listen.
But you were asking about the difference between the way Cenk does this and you.
Yeah.
I mean, there's been a wave of negativity lately with Cenk, and actually I got on his back for it. I was like, come on, Cenk, we need to, calm us down. I said, Ratigan's coming in. We met earlier this afternoon. I said, all good, good. I was a little worried about you at first.
Sure. Why is that?
I was like, this guy's gonna be fun, happy, right? Man, we went through an hour. You were still pissy, man. What's going on?
Well, I'm sorry, but first they roll out the oil spill for you, and then they won't provide information. Then they offer up the perpetual bank scam, which is never ending, and the money flying out of the banking system is like the oil well. And you layer on the rest of it. It's easy to get a little bit upset. Now, what people probably don't know about me, and it's my own fault because when I go on camera so often, I'll be all worked up, throwing pens like that, all worked up. People are like, that guy's just all worked up, which is true. I am all worked up. But when I go to bed at night, when I wake up in the morning, and when I think about the work that I'm doing, Cenk's doing, anybody who's basically stepping into the breach that you're doing with with everybody here, that the people that I work with do every day, the fact that we're able to do it is unbelievable. No other country in the world has a press like that, a vote like that, the ability to spend its money the way that we do. We're in a post-feudal era, and the robots haven't taken over yet. As far as I can see, if we get efficient government, discover free energy, we'll be good to go.
Well, I mean, this is a good platform to run on.
I'm not running. I'm just running for cable guy anyway.
Yeah.
So my understanding is that at this point in the program, and again, I'm new to this, but at this point in the program, you and Cenk discuss a little bit of the news of the day, that some of the things that Cenk may not have gotten to, that he was too neglected, too hot, too worked up, too negative, shall we say. Maybe Cenk and I both need to go to a frustration management seminar.
Well, I mean, I think this is
how I'm an optimist.
This is how it gets it out. I mean, people who talk, as you and Cenk like to do, just as long as you get it out, it's one of those therapeutic things. Just talk.
Post-feudal, pre-robot, JR. The world is our oyster. They may be sucking our oil and they may be stealing our money, but we can fix our government, discover free energy. We'll be surfing on the beach by 2020. What do you say?
I'm down, but with these
You surf?
I've tried it once.
How'd it go?
I think, first of all, the guy was teaching me. I was on a huge surfboard. He called it a boat. It was so big, but I was looking. It's one of those things. I snowboard.
Okay.
And that's enough of an extreme sport for me because at least I have some control. Whenever you're signing waivers that say, if you die, it's not our fault, I feel weird signing those types of things. And there's only three
BP
things.
has those.
Yeah, there's only three things I've done. It's surfing, which I didn't sign up for, but I knew my life was in danger. Snowboarding, and we went whitewater rafting. And it's just, I feel weird every time I do that. Snowboarding's the only one I'll stick with.
Here's what I noticed about surfing, and I've only been surfing, I don't know, probably a dozen times in my life, mostly longer ago than more recently. You think California, surfing, hang out, waves, good times, the girls, the boys, it's fun, fun, fun in the sun, right? So you roll out with your little surfboard and you're getting on the wave and you're Mr. Good Time Charlie. And I have never seen a meaner bunch of people. Never in my life. I'll tell you, I lived in New York City, JR, almost 20 years. And there's some nasty characters in that town. Riding on the subway, yelling at you on the street corner, pissed off, honking their horn. I'll tell you, I'll put any batch of California surfers up against the orneriest bunch of subway riders in New York City any day. Those surfers scare me, JR. Why are they so mean?
Well, this thing, we get this rap that LA especially is a fake city. The thing is, if
rightly so, no?
Well, to an extent, because if you do the right thing, we will show you what we really think, and that's just one of the taboos. I heard about this too. I've been here since '98, and I was born here, but then I had a gap between there until '98.
What was the gap? LSD?
No, it was St. Louis. I mean,
okay,
it's about the
same thing. What you're saying?
Yeah, no. So the thing is as long as you hit the right triggers, people will tell you what they really mean. It's just the way it is here. But
what the surfers seem to really mean is get the hell out of here.
Get out of the way. You can't be in the way.
That seems to be what the surfers mean. So what's with this? You were telling me before the show started. Well, actually, I'll get to the census thing in a second. This is just a terrible story. People with the census, they take out frustration with the government is obviously very understandable. Frustration with people who are working for the census is, please. But before we get to that, they approved Don't Ask, Don't Tell in the Senate Armed Services Committee, or they approved the repeal of it, I should say?
They're trying to work through it today, and also that was another thing yesterday. I think maybe, at least I saw it yesterday. Obama was at another fundraiser with Barbara Boxer, and he was heckled about it, about not doing it fast enough.
Failing to repeal it.
Yeah, and it's just like somebody yelled out, do it faster. And he got, he was upset, as he was the first time, but he showed it a lot more this time. And then also, so today, a lot of the people that are against it, for their ridiculous reasons being against it, all kind of came out very vocal. So I think it's still in the fight. The last I heard, at least today, they were going back and forth. I don't know what the resolution has been so far.
Do you think people know that there are already gays in the military, that whether there's a law one way or the other, have people caught on to the fact that there are currently gay people in the military?
I think the problem is the people serving next to them are going to lose some morale. They may not want to fight.
That's the concern.
So
that's the concern.
That's the ridiculous concern.
But Israel dealt with this. Israel's considered to have one of the most badass armies in the entire world. And they've had openly gay soldiers since '93. Forget gays in the military. How about using the military to secure foreign oil at a cost of billions of dollars a month? You think that's a good use of our country's resources?
Well, for the right reasons, it seems to be that's what they'd like to do.
For the right reasons?
Well, for whoever's in power who starts these wars, who send people off, they're like, oh, for the right reasons, we can take as many people as we want. Who cares if they're gay or not? Until they get to the point of, it's all about the same cycle of going back to the crazed base that's fueling what you need to do. That's why people go back and forth.
Which goes to, and we had Gray Davis on the MSNBC show this afternoon when we were up in Burbank, and we were talking about the news in California today about open primaries. And getting rid effectively of the extremism that's created by the closed primary system where the lefties play as far left as they can to try to get that thing going and the righties play as far right to get that thing going. And in the process, the normal, moderate, rational individuals who might actually be beneficial to creating a better government never even become candidates. You think open primary is a good solution for California? Let everybody run. You can run, Cenk will run, I'm going to move out here, I'll run.
I feel like that's what
Winner
happened.
take all, baby.
I feel like that's what happened when Schwarzenegger got elected.
Was an open primary.
I mean, it felt like it.
Yeah.
Everyone was in. I think Gary Coleman was in the mix.
think so.
A porn star, I forget her name. One of the
Why not?
And this is, of course, I was still in college, and I was still thinking about broadcasting sports every day. So I was like, what's politics?
Yeah.
So,
I think the open primaries, I think it's a good idea. I think that if you, again, imagine you have the open primary, top 2 vote getters in the open primary have a runoff. So you get rid of the porn stars and the yeehaws and the Ratigans and the JRs, and you get a couple of characters that may actually have the capacity to run the joint and let them run against each other. Can't be any worse than the system we've got right now, right?
Well, it depends on how many more you have with one particular. Because they're all gonna. I'm sorry.
You don't trust any of them.
That's been one of the things we've talked about before. No matter what the subject is, I just don't trust people.
You don't trust them.
Anybody.
I understand. That's why you just got to do it all in public. We just got to see what you're doing. Hands above the table, Poppy. I don't want anybody's hand beneath the table. Let's do this census story real quick, although I have mixed feelings about it because it's utterly horrendous. But it is, at the same time, incredibly compelling. Tragic is really what it is, and potentially insightful as to some of the dysfunction with our government. What happened here in California?
Yeah, I ran across this story. It happened last Thursday on the 24th, the 20th.
So that's a week ago.
Yeah.
Today.
The 20th of May. The census workers still running around. Actually, the census workers came to my house because I lost my form, which I was all about trying to send out, and I keep missing them. It doesn't matter. That's a whole different.
They're coming for you.
They've come
They're
twice
coming
already.
for you.
So this
Does
is
it
up
count
in
for the census if you're on YouTube? Like if they see you on YouTube, do they discount you?
They should, because
They
that's
should.
only,
Then
that's
you'd
the only
be
way they're gonna
counted. You
get
could
me.
be like, counted 10,000 times. I interrupted you. Sorry.
Not a problem.
This too like LSD, no?
Well, I mean, this too like Jake, I think.
Jank like LSD. Anyway, go on.
Victoria Helen Roger Vaslin. I'm going to give her all of her names, but Victoria Vaslin, basically. She's a 67-year-old woman. She lives up in Yuba City, up northern California.
North of San Francisco?
It's probably near Sacramento. I got the story from the Sacramento paper.
Okay.
Right around near there. And the census worker came by. This is the census worker side of the story. She came by, a female census worker came by the house just before 7:30. The sun was still up, because then apparently the way they're trained is to never come at night or never come too close to dark. So around dusk, you have a half hour and then you're out of there.
Got
She said it's the last house on her run. And she comes to the door, and a man comes. He's in his 50s, and he was later identified as the 67-year-old woman's boyfriend. He comes to the door, and he's very hostile with her. And one account says he had a gun in his hand. Another account says he was just very upset. And he said, "We don't want, get out of here." Whatever he may have
menacing,
said.
maybe with a gun, maybe not. But menacing the census worker, this woman and her boyfriend, potentially with gunplay, but we don't really know.
Right. So after the first get out of here, I don't want anything to do with it, she tries to go ahead and explain what they're actually doing. And from the back of the, or not from the back house, but from inside the house, becomes Victoria, apparently. There's the story. The Victoria comes with a shotgun. And so then, and it's like, it's threatening to the worker. So she takes off. It's over. She goes.
You come with a shotgun, I'll leave right now. I don't care if the show's not over or not.
Yeah,
I'm out.
There's the last one of our last house on her run anyway.
Yeah.
So she goes, tells the supervisor. Supervisor tells her to call the police. The police get called, interview her. The whole process from like 7:30 till 10 o'clock till the police get to the residence again is about, almost 3 hours. So they get there around 10. Now this time, the police say for sure the guy came brandishing a gun.
So the man answers the door. There's a man and a woman who live in the house. Man answers the door with a gun when the cops are there.
Yes, and so they wrestle him to the ground. They're subduing him, placing him under arrest, getting rid of his gun, and out comes Victoria with probably, I assume, the same shotgun. And she's approaching them, and they scream out, "Stop, put it down." She wouldn't listen to their calls. They shoot her multiple times. The
police shoot the
police
woman?
shoot the woman multiple times. There's 2 police officers shooting her, and then there's other police officers trying to subdue the guy. There's multiple police officers at the scene, and so
They killed the woman?
Killed her. They killed her last Thursday. She was buried today, from what I read. So
where's the guy?
well, he was arrested. There actually is a mugshot of him. I don't know if you have it up there, Jesus, but there's a mugshot of the guy, and he was later identified as a boyfriend. He's in his 50s, so apparently. And the first thing that came to my here he is.
Look at this guy.
Yeah,
he scares me
his
looking
name.
at
Let me
him.
get his name. Yeah.
Although that was
Lionel
if there was ever yellow journalism, it was me saying he scares me looking at him.
Yeah. Lionel
That's
Craig
high grade
Patterson.
journalism for you. Sorry.
Yeah, no, Lionel Craig Patterson. They call him Lonnie.
Okay.
At least the family friends call him Lonnie. He's taken into custody and everything. He's still, I think he may still be held now. They're trying to decide if his bail should be set lower or anything.
And what happened to the census worker?
She went on.
Did she come back with the police, or was it just the police?
It was just police, because then she went to.
She didn't come back.
Yeah, no, they were out of, once this was going down, it was police.
And the police killed the woman.
And apparently she's a grandmother of 7, 8 kids.
Oh my God!
Now there's a little piece of a report from her son, who was talking about how devastating it was. Number 14, to see what he was saying in one of the reports.
Mom was just an amazing, fun, charismatic, fun-loving person, and her whole life was dedicated to helping her kids and her grandkids.
That's how Christian Bastati remembers his 67-year-old mom. But something went terribly wrong here last night.
Something happened that was really bad, and we want to get down to the bottom of it. Lonnie answered the door, and I don't know if he had a weapon in his hand. I think he's booked with not a weapon, but they said something lethal, and they threw him to the ground.
Bastati believes his mother was frightened, and that's why she grabbed her shotgun again.
And I think she reacted to Lonnie being thrown on the ground. I don't think she really knew what was going on. I think she was disoriented. It was dark. It was late.
Bastati says his mother was still inside when officers opened fire. 2 bullets pierced the wall.
I think the rookie cop panicked and made a really bad decision. And again, she may be a good cop, but good cops make bad decisions.
Roger Vaslin lay dead at her front door.
Her head was right here and her body was right here. So when they shot her, obviously she was away from the door. So the cop that shot here, I mean, I'm not a crime scene investigator, but obviously line of sight, you have no idea who you're shooting. And does this look like someone that is going to kill you at your front door? I mean, really, you made a mistake and you shot a 67-year-old grandmother of 7 kids 7 times, and you could have done a lot better taking care of the family in that tragedy, and you shouldn't have left her there laying dead for 11 o'clock at night till 7 in the morning. Mom.
So I mean, after that kind of
that
thing,
is the most heartbreaking
Right.
story. Forget everything else that I've been talking about, JR, for the past hour and 20 minutes or whatever it's been. That'll break your heart.
So the first question that comes, though, after all, there's a lot of negativity. There's a lot of scare tactics that are put for these census workers come by. They're looking to take over, look in your house and steal you, whatever many different
Sure,
people
whatever
that
the
are
fear mongering around the
Yeah.
census may be.
And so the first thing I wondered was, are they listening to this, or is she just paranoid in general? Because then that's when the lines.
But don't buy the fear.
Yeah.
This is just another example of fear taken to its most extreme results in death, results in destruction, whether it's the fear of the census or potentially the fear in an officer of the law in an unpredictable situation. We're not saying that this is not any great revelation, but my goodness me, if we can't get the fear-mongering and the fear in general under control, which I think so much of the fear comes from people feeling powerless. I think people don't feel like they have a lot of capacity to influence what's going to happen in their own lives, and they feel like that's being taken from them. And so I think the more people are able to absorb information and do something about it, which is why I talk about the news and what you can do about it, that there's no more effective way to reduce the fear in a man or a woman than for that man or that woman to feel more confident that no matter what happens next, they'll be okay. And to the extent to which our country and our culture is diminishing that, unfortunately, I think it feeds into these types of situations. And the more people are able to feel more in control of their own lives and their own selves, the less fear there is, and the more we can actually move towards actual solutions. I mean, I can't think, like I said, of a more heartbreaking story than that. But
I think, sadly enough, whenever stuff like this happens, you would think, at least I would want things to be different as far as the fighting over it or the disagreements over it, because this, I think, is going to cause more people to be harder on their side of the issue or not. And then more people are going to say, well, they shot that old lady in that nice neighborhood. All she did was come out and protect herself at 10 o'clock at night.
Right.
And you can take whatever aspects of it that you want, and more people, I think, are going to do it.
Yeah. Well, let's hope not. Again, I think that the more we're able to focus people on what they can do, to feel more power, to feel less threatened, so that they don't feel the need to lash out. They don't feel that need to go towards the violence, to go towards those final moments. There's a friend of mine told me not that long ago, it's one thing to be frustrated with the world or the situation or whatever it may be. We're talking about everything obviously that everybody's talking about these days. The question is, how do you take that energy, that frustration, and not let it turn into a man who goes into the town square and burns himself in public to make a point, where the only thing that happens at the end of that is he's burned himself to death? And how do you take that same energy and move it towards activities, whether it's Code Pink, the things, what we've seen in the primaries with the anti-incumbency, or the man we're about to talk to? I'm going to make a transition here to a break. John Soltz is our next guest, organizer of Vote Vets. He's on a direct campaign to end our country's energy dependence in order to protect our soldiers who are too often called into duty to protect, either implicitly or explicitly, America's energy assets. He will argue, and I agree with him, that so much of our military to this day is used for that exact purpose. The news and what we can do about it, a man who has a little bit of both with us here on TYT. John Soltz, Vote Vets, right after this. Hi, welcome back to TYT headquarters. I am Dylan Ratigan, host of the Dylan Ratigan Show, friend of Cenk Uygur. Cenk Uygur, vacationer in Amsterdam, and partaker of whatever Amsterdam may offer that he might enjoy. We'll leave that up to Cenk, but I have to thank him for the opportunity to sit in for him this afternoon. He's back with you here on TYT on Tuesday of next week after the holiday. Again, the theme here from me this evening, the news and what we can do about it. John Soltz, I'll cut straight to it here, a man who is all too familiar with the news, a veteran in this country, a man who still serves in the reserves, and a man who is on a crusade, a campaign to educate the American people not only about the news, if you will, from the Middle East and our soldiers and this war, but perhaps to offer them a broader and more complete context about these wars and a path towards solution so that we can end them and at least be honest about why it is that we fight them. John and his organization is Vote Vets, and it is an absolute delight to have you here, John, and of course somebody who I admire and consider a friend. So before we get into the conversation of the day, if you will, John, tell us, what is Vote Vets? What are you guys doing?
Well, we do a lot of stuff, but we call ourselves the voice of today's veterans. So we like to bring to life real veteran stories and real veterans issues to highlight basically what's going on in the wars or how policy affects our troops today. So we've been talking a lot about energy because not only does energy security affect how many times our troops go to Iraq, but last month it affects our National Guard troops down in Louisiana because they end up cleaning up for, messes that big oil with trillions of dollars of profit make.
At the end of the day, is it too simple to say that your point is that that our best and brightest, our youngest and bravest, however you want to characterize the American Army, but no one looks at it with anything other than great admiration and its obvious capabilities, but that those capabilities are being abused by our government to serve energy interests? Is that too simple on my part?
It's pretty close. I mean, the bottom line is that our troops are beholden to a poor energy policy, which, ensures that they're going to go to the Middle East over and over and over again. And certainly I think when you talk about energy security and you talk about our dependence on foreign oil, it's certainly a national security issue first, more than anything, because our entire military is focused on our energy resources. But today, we put another $1.5 million on the air, which makes, obviously another argument for the energy climate bill legislation, but basically saying, look, when you've got all this greatest natural disaster ever in the Gulf, and I know I was on your MSNBC show talking about this after the president's speech, but offshore drilling was never the answer, and you can see not only is it not the answer, but the disaster it's caused has now even affected the fact that our National Guard has to go clean up the mess. So that's really what we're talking about today, and if now isn't the time to pass the energy climate legislation, I'm not sure when it is, because this is a story that's been dominating the news for the last month, and it's really a time where Congress and the President need to act to find some long-term solutions, not just for energy security, but on the climate side, because they're both interconnected. You
mentioned that the new ad today, the $1.5 million spend at places like MSNBC. Thank you. I know that you help actually to sponsor my own program, and I appreciate your support of our message. As you know, it's very much in alignment with your own message. If you were to look, though, at what anybody could do, if I went to votevets.org, what is it that my mother can do, that Jody Evans over at Code Pink can do? JR wants to help. What can he do?
Go to votevets.org, and when you go to votevets.org and you sign up, every couple times a week you're probably going to get an email. It might be under my name or one of our other veterans, and going to tell you what you have to do every day to help veterans. So today we launched the $1.5 million ad. I'm hoping here in about 10 minutes the House is going to pass Patrick Murphy's resolution to repeal the Don't Ask, Don't Tell ban. Now, Patrick Murphy is a second-term congressman from near Philadelphia in Pennsylvania, who is the first Iraq War veteran elected to Congress. And we think, and he's someone who we helped get elected through our political action committee. We've given him money, we raised him money, but we hope this bill is going to pass here, the House, and then we're going to have a bigger fight in the Senate. It got out of the Senate Armed Services Committee today, so we're going to have a big vote on that. So VoteVets is where you can sign up, and you can always find out what's affecting the community. So today we're talking about energy independence. Tomorrow, most likely, we'll be talking about Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Next week, we'll probably be talking about Joe Sestak and his big win over our inspector and how we can support him going forward against Pat Toomey in Pennsylvania, since he's the first Afghanistan war veteran elected to Congress. So if you want to find out what's going on in the veterans community every day on Capitol Hill and you want to figure out how you can make a difference, all you got to do is go to VoteVets and sign up. We've got 100,000 people signed up over there. Over 50,000 of them are military families or veterans. But if you're not a veteran, you should still sign up, because in the future of our country, the most important supporters for veterans actually are non-veterans, because only 1/3 of 1% of the population is serving in this conflict. It's the only time we fought a protracted war with no end state. And we are dependent upon, and young veterans are going to be dependent upon, a lot of non-veterans to support our issues. So everyone's welcome to sign up and learn how they can make a difference every day, who to call, who to donate to make a difference on our issues.
And you know you have my support every step of the way, John. Do you think people understand that we have had an army, an actively engaged combat military in the Middle East for a decade now that has been largely the same individuals, the same men, the same women being sent over and over and over again into what can only be characterized as the closest thing at its worst to hell on earth, as a way effectively to protect the balance of the population from really being exposed to what's going on? Do you think people know that?
This is the issue that hurts me the most, because no, I don't think America really understands that. And I'll tell you why. The first reason they don't understand it is because they don't feel threatened every day. Okay, so it's not like, we invaded Iraq as if it was actually justified and there was going to be, an attack on the United States. So I don't think they feel that threat. But this weekend is going to be Memorial Day weekend. And for people in the military, it's not a day to protest any war. It's not a day to say you support any war. It's just a day that you remember those who died in war. And most Americans this weekend, we talk about going to the beach, they're going to go to Vegas, they're going to do their thing, they're going to party it up. But Memorial Day in this country is a 3-day weekend, and all everyone knows is they have Monday off. You have a cultural shift in this country that's gotten away from honoring those who fought and died. And I think what's most important for veterans and veterans that are listening is veterans have to lead in those ceremonies. Veterans to go, and they have to do on Memorial Day what they should do, which is remember their friends who died in wars and family members of those that have died in wars. Because if we don't remember first, then the rest of society won't care. So I think, no, not only do they not know we got guys overseas all the time because they don't feel it, but I think we've gotten away from service in this country, and we have so few people serving that it's a real big problem.
How much is the media responsible for that by virtue of the nature of its coverage of these wars?
Well, that depends on the network that you're talking about, Dylan. I happen to think MSNBC does a rather good job of talking about the war in itself, and I actually think some of your competitor networks do also. But when you start looking at what we're promoting in regards to, the other TV stations that people watch and those types of things, I think when you want to sell and you want ratings, well, it's very hard for people to always turn on the news every day and watch war. And I think after a while, the casualty rates and the death count it becomes more like the weather report. So if people want to watch news stations and they want to start watching, even stations like Al Jazeera, how the press and the war is covered in the international market is different from ours. And although our cable news channels, for the most part, like to cover the war, really mainstream, the more the mainstream media doesn't do the due diligence that the American or the international press or some of our cable networks try to do. Most people choose not to watch cable news, and that's unfortunate.
Can I ask you a question about Afghanistan, John?
Let's talk.
When I talk to, and this is only anecdotal, I don't claim this as any grand analysis, but when I have the opportunity to speak to either soldiers who are currently serving in Afghanistan or have recently returned from Afghanistan, and I say this on the show, and I ask them, I say, why is it when you come under assault, when you are under violent assault with direct threat to your life and to the life of those you are working with, and I say, why are you under that assault? What is it that is provoking that assault? Too often the answer that I get is we're trying to protect ourselves from losing our lives because we're there. That being there is the risk. Is that the case? And what is the sense day to day? Forget the grand policy, the State Department. Day to day, you wake up, you have coffee, you put on your pants, and you go to work, and you're an American soldier in Afghanistan. What is the definition of the mission for those who are there? Not in the grand presidential sense, but in the day-to-day sense. I wake up, I've had a cup of coffee, and the sun is rising. Why am I there?
Well, I think in both the wars, you ask a fundamental, real question, and I think there's a lot of people that are going to feel differently as to why we got involved in Afghanistan versus Iraq. But one of the major sort of things I certainly talked about the night the president spoke at West Point on some of the cable networks, they had some really fancy answers about why we're in Afghanistan. And if I was to go and ask soldiers who are in the field today, I don't think anybody can give you a real good answer as to what that mission is. And that's a huge red flag. Now, that doesn't mean there isn't a military mission in Afghanistan, but the complexity of what this administration's chosen to try to do, I think, is something up for debate. And so, unfortunately, where it puts our troops now is in a posture of, today, when I wake up, I'm going to not die. And that is sort of where both wars have reverberated back to, where your troops are on the ground saying, okay, my role in a convoy attack is going to be, I'm going to drive through a kill zone, or I'm the aid and litter team, and I'm going to provide medical support for the person who's wounded. And most of the time what our soldiers are going through every day in both of these conflicts is very tactical sort of analysis on what their job is, because there's very sort of a big failure on what the strategic side is. Now, the larger question you're talking about, what people getting shot at and how they respond in the COIN strategy, is the president's brought into this COIN strategy, we call it, which is counterinsurgency operations. And some of the General Petraeus guys, they're actually on both sides of the fence. Some of the thinkers are Democrats, some are Republicans. They've really sold the president on what counterinsurgency strategy is. And I was both vested on endorse what he wanted to do in Afghanistan, but mostly because we oppose COIN as a viable strategy for our country. What it would cost us economically to do it, that it would require President Karzai to be a legitimate partner in peace, that it would require the Pakistanis to want to play. So essentially, I'm 100% confident that if you put more troops in Afghanistan, you can provide security, which is what McChrystal's trying to sell. General McChrystal's trying to say, we're going to provide security. Okay, so that's great, but we don't really have an interagency process in our government to go in and give the help. We've got problems with the posture and Hamid Karzai and whether or not, they feel that he's legitimate or if he's a heroin drug runner. And you certainly have issues on where the Pakistanis are in this debate. So when you're only sure that you can be 100% confident that you are successful at 25% of the equation, do you want to, again, get into a situation where you lead with the military and you put them into these situations on the ground that are so complex? And so I certainly would have rather for the president to have not put a timeline on Afghanistan, because I do feel if bin Laden's there, we have a right to get him any place, anywhere, anytime. But I think his scope and his mission focus should be completely probably taken away from the COIN strategy and completely focused on al-Qaeda terror elements that operate or train in that country. Because no matter how much troops we put in any country all over this world, al-Qaeda can bend, move, they can attack us cheap, and we could spend trillions of dollars chasing ghosts all over Afghanistan or other states in the Middle East and expose hundreds of thousands of troops to multiple deployments, the effect that's going to have on these veterans for a long time. It's a very high cost analysis for most likely what you're going to get in counterterrorism operations.
Yeah, I agree with you, John, and I can't applaud loudly enough or aggressively enough your efforts every single day to deliver the news, so to speak, and more importantly, provide an avenue, a mechanism for people to feel empowered, to get educated, for those of us who are not veterans, but who are incredibly empathetic to what our veterans and our active service members are going through, so that we can help, so that we can apply the political pressure, so that we can apply the observation of the cost of this war, not just the grand ambitions of this war, but a real understanding of the cost of this war and the real leverage when it comes to things like energy. John, again, thank you so much for what you're doing. John Soltz, votevets.org. It's worth being a part of this community for the simple reason that it is the lives of our brothers and sisters who are out halfway around the world every day, attempting to serve to the fullest of their ability their obligations to our military, which has been deployed on our behalf, and it is our obligation to look out for their best interests every single day and to hold our government to account to the extent to which it passes the buck and seeks effectively convenient political solutions that come at the expense of the American citizenry or our soldiers. Votevets.org, if you're not already involved with it, it truly is one of the best places that I've seen in connecting the dots on this war. Not just the grand policy, not just the security, not just the energy, not just the revolving door of soldiers, but the entire matrix, which is critical, obviously, if we're going to do anything about it. So again, thanks to John for giving us a slice of his afternoon today and for his efforts every single day. We're going to take a momentary break here at TYT. We're back, one more block to go. Anna's going to join us. You're wondering, where's Anna with this Ratigan guy? Who is this guy? Cenk's gone to Amsterdam. You got some guy you never seen before hosting TYT. JR harassing him. Well, Anna's going to step into the lurch and see if she can add a little feminine touch to this afternoon's proceedings, not to mention an evaluation of your guest host's performance this fine day. We're back here on TYT right after this.
Lean back, right hand on the plywood. Cream on the inside, clean on the outside.
All right, welcome back, TYT. Winding our way down, Cenk Uygur, my main man at this point, at least when he's in Amsterdam or on remote. I like to keep him, because he can scare you sometimes. So you want to make sure you have your protection when Cenk's around because he gets a little hot. I know it's easy for me to say. I'm the new guy. I'm Dylan Ratigan, and I've never done this program before, as you surely know. Anna Kasparian, is that I pronounce your last name correct?
You pronounced it correctly, right. Yes.
They know who you are.
They do know.
You're here all the time.
Show. Yes, I am, every single day.
So, compared to Cenk's normal hosting of this program, how'd I do?
I think you actually did a really great job. In the beginning, I could tell you
were a little too newsy. I'd never done it before.
You had never done it before. I think that with new media, shows like The Young Turks.
Sure.
The
TYT,
host,
right? That's what the kids call it.
TYT. The host is required to be as candid as possible.
Right.
Right? So you were a little cautious.
Contained.
You were contained
Wouldn't
and cautious
you be?
in the beginning.
Wouldn't you be?
Of course, you're stepping onto
but
new
still,
territory.
I shouldn't interrupt. So I was a little cautious at the beginning.
You were a little cautious, and then toward the end, you started opening up a little bit.
Okay.
And that's what new media is all about.
And the real Dylan started to emerge at that point.
Of course.
So can we discuss, as I'm learning, this is all educational for me. One, this is the Young Turks. Obviously, Cenk is Turkish. Yeah?
He is, yes.
You are not.
I'm Armenian.
How is it that an Armenian was allowed into the Young Turks?
Well, first of all, the Young Turks wanted to hire me.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's
so
how
the
it
Turks
worked.
like Armenian girls. Is that what you're saying? They were chasing you down the street? Was Cenk, does his wife know about this?
I don't think anybody could not like Armenian girls.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Armenian girls are top of the line.
I couldn't agree more with that. If you were to look at your positive evaluation. So I started out, I was cautious. Now you've got the full Dylan. We've only been here for, God help us if this show is 2 more hours. Who knows what would happen?
Right, of course. Yeah.
How many more times would I have to do this before I could launch? And people probably don't realize this because of all my gray hair, that I'm actually a couple years younger than Cenk. But if I wanted to launch, for instance, just a couple of doors down, or maybe just on the floor below or nearby, the slightly older looking Turks, and have my own digital news service, if you will, or digital digicast, if you will. Think I could take you guys down?
Oh, take us down?
Take you downtown.
Let me tell you something
Take
about
you to
our
the
show.
cleaners, okay?
You couldn't take us down because we have an army behind us.
Really?
Yeah, so it would be impossible.
So I'm a slightly older looking Turk.
Right.
Who wants to hang out with that guy? I want to hang out with the young Turks, not with the slightly older looking Turk.
Exactly. You want to hang out with the coolest Turks,
Yeah.
and the coolest Turks are the young Turks.
So my premise here today was the news and what we can do about it.
Right.
And it goes to what JR was saying earlier, in all seriousness, whether it's Cenk carrying on about it, Cenk gets really negative apparently, whatever, or people say to me on my show on MSNBC, they're like, Jesus, Dylan, if you tell us how screwed up it is one more time, I'm changing the channel to somebody who's just not telling me how screwed up it is because I can't deal with it.
Right.
Do you think that we are making the turn, and how do you think we can improve the quality, whether it's the work that somebody like I do on MSNBC or the work that Cenk does in this studio, so that we're moving away from just this sort of detailed description of just how screwed up it is, although I think that's
Right.
critical for people to understand, but I also think it's been a few years of this. People get it, and we need to make the turn to start to get people engaged and active toward the solution. What do you think is the best way to move in that direction?
Well, first of all, I think it's critical to have the serious news stories, the sad news, the terrible news. People need the truth. That's what journalism is based on, telling people what's really going on in the world. However, people need comedic relief. People need light news. They need to have a little fun with the news. They want to be entertained and get the news at the same time. So TYT does a good job at mixing those two. So you get the serious news stories, and then you get Unicorn Lady.
I love Unicorn Lady.
Yeah.
But can I tell you my favorite story? JR, are you there? Are you there with us still? Is JR still here? I'm going to tell you guys my favorite story of the day, because I'm into gadgetry and this sort of thing. And plus, I flew in from New York last night, so I'm very aware of this, okay? Are you guys familiar with this crazy super, hypersonic airplane that they tested out? Have you heard about this thing? Have you heard of this, JR?
Is that the huge one that they landed here? I
Yeah.
saw a quick little
Yeah,
blip
yeah,
on
yeah.
It's like a
Yeah.
triple deck or something like that.
Well, no. So here's how this thing works. This thing, by the way, does New York, LA. Want to guess how long it takes? 40 minutes.
40 minutes?
40 minutes, New York, LA.
That's amazing.
You know how fast it goes? JR's not even paying attention to me. He doesn't care. He's like, I'm not leaving LA, so I don't need to fly on some super fast airplane. I don't care what that Ratigan guy says. I'm staying right here. Maybe I'll go surfing. The way this thing works, so remember the airplane, they had the propeller.
Right.
And then they invented the jet engine. And that's like a huge revolution. They're like, this is a whole new way to propel so much faster, all the obvious things. Apparently what they have discovered with this hypersonic plane that they tested, I don't know, the other past day or two, they create a shock wave in the air. God knows what it does to the birds, by the way. I didn't get into that, but that's so that we'll come. That's for tomorrow's show. That's for somebody else. But they create a shock wave in the air. Hopefully, it's at a high end. There are no birds there. I don't know. I'm hoping. Okay?
Right.
The shock wave, because the air is just like the water, right? Like it's just a fluid mass that it's a gas, obviously, but it has the same dynamic. Forms waves, bubbles, all this kind of stuff in the air. The shock wave forms a giant wave in the air. And then the airplane surfs on the shock wave as a tsunami travels this ocean. They create they create a tsunami in the sky, brother. Okay? I'm talking tsunami in the sky, airplane surfing tsunami in the sky, 5,000 miles an hour. They say that it's by magnitude as big of a move as propeller to jet engine.
Wow.
Would you fly on such a craft?
Absolutely not.
Why not?
No way.
We could go to New York for dinner together.
Right, I'll wait a few years.
We could fly on the wave to New York for dinner.
Right.
And then fly back on the wave after dinner.
I know, that sounds great in theory.
Yeah.
But this is new technology. It doesn't sound fun.
No one died?
No one died yet.
Other than maybe some birds.
Right, of course. And look, I'm afraid to fly to begin with on a regular plane.
But this would be over faster.
it'd be over
It's
faster.
less time on the bird.
But it's a newer form of flying, so it needs to be tested a little more.
So you want a little more right stuff
Right.
on this.
I'll give it a decade.
A decade.
Yeah, I like to be thorough in my investigation.
Well, thank you, truly, for the opportunity to join you guys. JR, thank you. Again, Cenk, if you're watching in the eye in the sky somewhere, thank you for the use of your absolutely beautiful facility. I will leave you with the news and what you can do about it. And what you can do about it is join Cenk on June 7th to help him get the money back from Goldman Sachs. Vote Vets, worth a look. Also code PINK. Thank you.